Oh, yes! This is a good one. It's also probably going to be quite lengthy. Let us now cover the Red Mist. Starting with a review of her story. Kali was from District 23, specifically within the worst of the backstreets in that city, certainly in more recent times. And according to her, it wasn't any better in the past. She likely lost her parents, as in they were dead, when she was 7. And quite messily considering that she was crying over blood and guts spilled everywhere. So she had to depend on herself if she was to survive, and survive she did. Her education in survival became tougher when she was 13. A miracle to do so under her circumstances. She became a fixer at age 23, rather than join up with a syndicate, which she saw as beneath her. She wanted to protect those that she was with. She also repaid her debts. Unfortunately, they confused that for weakness, those within the apartment block that she was living in, and tried to rob her. She slaughtered them for their treachery. Then, when she was a Class 2 fixer, she attracted Carmen's attention, and after a discussion comparing the pain between the backstreets and the nests, both had pain, which were variations of that theme. Kali was given Carmen's business card. And then she arrived in the lab in the outskirts and was hired by Elcor. She dismissed Carmen's reference to her charity as a repaying of debts. But we know the full story of that, don't we? Since then, she guarded Carmen and did what she could to assist her, at least as far as combat was concerned, and even helped Carmen to recruit Daniel, an elite that was confused for a con artist. After an argument between her and Carmen, her work under the official sponsorship of Elcor, a wing of the world, resulted in her being promoted to Class 1, and then she was given a color. That was what made the Red Mist. Sometime before her final battle with Garion, Carmen introduced Kali to EGO, a weapon that corresponds to the mind of the wielder, specifically a sword that was extracted from what was once Christopher, one of the test subjects who was changed into an abnormality by Elcorp's singularity. Specifically, nothing there. This EGO was extracted from what was left of him. A sword with giant eyeballs attached to the crimson chunks of flesh that were a part of that weapon. They were looking at her, making even her uncomfortable. But it wasn't unbearable. Carmen cautioned Kali as it was a miracle that it could be extracted at all in its unstable state, likely referring to how stable the abnormality was when the EGO was extracted. Either that or the singularity wasn't as stable as it was during the events of the Botany Corporation. It didn't prevent Kali from accepting it, as she's seen various workshop products and knows the potential dangers of each. This EGO felt like a heavy greatsword, but when she used it a few days after to protect one of her colleagues, she heard a voice of someone yearning for something. It was the sound of something mimicking human speech. She felt a strong obsession, along with attachment and voice. It was hard for her to describe. The stronger and clearer her desire to protect became, the louder the voice in her head became. She tried to pretend that she didn't hear it. The voice was grinding at first, then it spoke in a language that she could understand. It kept asking for a shell, like the abnormality that it came from. She kept ignoring it. The power that it provided outweighed the danger that it posed to her. She cut down many threats, even as the voice became stronger and deeper with all the blood it feasted on, until it got so bad that it asked, "Don't you desire a human shell as well?" Kali considered this to be a monologue, yet she was paralyzed with fear upon hearing it, which was no small feat for her. She questioned if the lies were worth the blood spilt as it spoke that, although she was asking if she was thinking to herself. She denied this as she protected others. She did not initiate combat. Yeah. It's justified if it's used to respond against violence. Although it certainly was enough for her to question herself. What would be left after all that violence? A blood-stained shell. She was warned of being taken over by the EGO if she broke down, which she was about to do. She believed in Carmen, one with life in her eyes, full of virtue, not letting those that jeer at her speech get to her. This was enough to make Kali believe that change was possible, as long as she protected that person. She was feeling rage building inside her as she was thinking about this, but she was able to regain control. Her heart was still feeling aflame. She felt something form around her, something tough and dense, forming from a veil of mist, revealing a coat around her. This was an EGO that was truly hers. When Carmen found out, she acted as if she suspected that this might happen. This was likely similar to how Philip formed his own EGO, except Kali was able to regain control and stabilize it. Carmen told her that she needed to wield it, a fact that was more important than just manifesting it. She couldn't manifest it for long with her first successful attempt. As she got used to it, she would manifest her EGO suit for longer, and was able to draw out its full power, she was able to protect more with both the sword and armor that resonated with her emotions, which granted great durability and strength. The researchers were struggling, but she kept doing her job. Then an incident happened. Enoch died in a failed experiment, one that he volunteered to participate in, much to her sorrow, although it hit Carmen the hardest. Kali noticed that Carmen was losing the will to live, the life drained from her. A few days later, Carmen killed herself in the bathtub that would become the bloodbath abnormality, due to the guilt that she felt, guilt that overwhelmed her. Kali remained in the lab in the outskirts. Carmen had equipped her to deal with the strongest threat to Carmen's legacy. Garion, arbiter of the head, along with 2 claws and a load of abnormalities. Well, we know how that ended, don't we? I've mentioned it enough times. Anyway, let's move on to, well, a discussion between Roland and Angela. Sometime after the Blue Reverberation's visit to the library, Roland was called by Angela and he wanted to know why. Angela had an idea how to lure the Blue Reverberation using a theoretical book of the Red Mist, even though the Red Mist, at least as a human, isn't exactly around anymore. Roland asked if she's ready to do that, worried that she might be considering turning Gibura into a book. Angela, thankfully, considered that too ruthless. Besides, it's unnecessary to do that, as there were a few things that was used and even wielded by the Red Mist, which she could use to recreate the Red Mist at her full strength, although she's unable to exist outside the library. Roland understood this to be a simulation of the Red Mist. Angela confirmed this. There was just the problem of bait. As far as Roland was concerned, what would they use to lure the Red Mist with? Angela mentioned books about the Botany Corporation, likely something that would have accelerated the research, or at least to prevent it from falling into the hands of others. Yeah, about Cogito. Roland got what Angela was getting at. She was also not going to have certain patron librarians fight her. No, Roland, it's not because she's too tough for them. It's because it'd be awkward for the Red Mist to use her Egio against those she worked with. Let's see, Elia, Gabriel, Giovanni, Michelle, Daniel, Benjamin, and Lisa. That last one would be especially awkward for Gibura, or Kali, as she was known then. Wouldn't she? Yeah, imagine that, looking at Tipperev, or Lisa as she was before, and ask, Lisa, is that you? Kid, why are you older? Yeah, there is a clear difference between Lisa, over 10 years in the past, and Tippereth as she is now, as in one who has reached puberty and has gone through it, mostly. The other three, yes, she'd have no problems with fighting, as she hasn't met Roland until she was Gebura. As for Gebura, she'll think that she's a copy that she'll have no problems with destroying. For all we know, she might consider her illegal. As for Bainar, well, let's get to that later. Roland agreed that it's better to have her fight those that she doesn't know at all. Roland was not expecting to face the red mist of the past in person. Angela asked how it felt. Roland was as thrilled as he was worried. Well, good job he's wearing black trousers. Upon arrival in the lobby, Kali was disoriented, unsure where she was. Angela appeared to greet her as Gebura, which confused Kali, as she asked Angela who she was. Angela told her, understanding that she wasn't aware of who she was, likely from a time before Angela was even built by Aeon. Kali repeated her question, and Angela answered it, which confused her as the library didn't exist at the time she was at, in her memory. She asked if she was yet another weird factory, or some shady experimenting grounds. Well, it used to be the latter, but not anymore. Now it's a place of death via gladiatorial combat. Kali didn't know how she was there. She was in the outskirts lab last time she checked. Angela wanted to ask her a few questions to find out where she's at the point she was. Angela asked about an acquaintance of hers called Carmen. This made Kali ask if some wing was pulling that, trying to trample on them. Actually, Kali, it's an older version of the wing that you're working for, at least as far as you're concerned. Angela gave her an offer. Answer a few questions and she'll give her the answer that they are looking for. Specifically, Kali's employer. Kali was willing to answer her. Angela was offering a book containing the information on how to obtain cogito. A book that was waiting beyond that door. She was making her an offer that Kali was cautious about, warning Angela that if she tried to pull something, she'd reduce the library to rubble. Angela asked what the current situation is with the outskirts lab. Kali made sure that it was clear that if she answers, Angela would tell her how to get cogito. Angela assured her that it's among the mountains of books stored there. She just records and collects them. Kali would trust her with this. Angela asked if Daniel was among them. Kali told her that the blue-haired nerd was there. Wait, that's his natural hair colour? When asked about Lisa, Kali replied that she was still there. Angela even mentioned Enoch's corpse. That was in storage after the experiments went wrong. the brain that would be turned into the male Tippereth later. When asked about Elia, Callie confirmed that she was around as well. Angela noted that this was when the Red Mist was writing her own legend, where she struggled to protect the grief-stricken Carmen and her colleagues from outside threats. Angela! That's both insensitive and a little ahead of the plot, especially as she saw it as pitiful, struggling to find a word to describe that situation, where every researcher was careful with their words, as she was struggling to keep it together, as it was without Enoch, due to him dying as a consequence of that experiment. Well, the guilt was likely due to her bringing them in from the outskirts. And then having one of them die due to a decision she made. All those around her were a little two-faced as they consoled her. At least, well, they were consoling her when she was around, but behind her back they felt resentful. This was what broke her. When the project that was started with her convincing speeches showed no progress, which resulted in losses and sacrifices, Angela saw hypocrisy of perpetuating sins while preaching goodness, and asked if she, Callie, to be more precise, found it despicable. Angela, technically Carmen is your mother. Less annoyed, Callie. Her patience was running out. She wanted to know how to acquire cogito properly, threatening to not overlook Angela's words when she insulted Carmen, if she didn't. Callie didn't see that Angela had the right to mock their efforts or Carmen's sincerity. This annoyed Angela. Well, considering that she was made possible because of Carmen, due to the chain of events that was set off that led to the cycles, the Seed of Light, and the library. Well, regardless, she wisely decided to back off, as that was too hostile of her. She would gain nothing to say such bitter things to Callie now. Callie noted that she at least had the heart to apologize. Angela just admitted that she knew when to admit her faults. She then wanted to ask Callie something, which she allowed. She had seen many fixers while taking care of that place. Most were motivated by wealth and fame. Callie was different. There was no promise of payment, but she was willing to protect Carmen and everyone else in the outskirts lab. Callie remarks that she's not a charity worker. Wait, there are charities in the city? Well, there are orphanages in the nest. Giovanni certainly was raised in one. Angela continued with the question. That question was, how did Callie bring herself to help the people within the outskirts lab unconditionally without anything to gain from it? Callie questioned Angela if she was taunting her. Or was she curious? Angela thought that her behaviour was pathetic at first. She had the power to earn anything, which was the ideal of a fixer, yet she took the path none others would. Angela lacked knowledge of why, so her assessment was flawed. She thought that an assessment with all the facts might change that. Callie was asking if she thinks that she's getting the short end of the stick. Angela did think that Callie was getting the short end of the stick, as the other researchers could earn money and honour, but what would she gain? Could she keep doing what she did, even if she gained nothing in return? Or worse, it could lead to a painful end, an end that most fixers get to eventually, hinting at the original Red Mist's demise. But she stopped herself from speaking that to the copy, because as far as she's concerned, it hadn't happened yet. Yeah, before she let that slip, she stopped herself and simply asked if it was worth it. Callie wasn't expecting material awards. All she was looking forward to was Carmen's purpose coming to fruition. She's sure that the rest of the research team was thinking the same thing. She blamed herself for being incapable of assisting with that. The reason why she did what she did, well, she became more stalwart for every day that passed. It was because, well, she stopped herself, believing that Angela wouldn't understand, as she wasn't there. The strength in her eyes and voice. Angela saw that as enough and thanked her for her answers. She then explained the rules. The book of how to extract cogitos beyond the door, where she would have to fight for her life to get it. And if she dies, she'll become a book. She asks if she agrees to the terms. Yeah, Callie didn't expect it to be that easy. She's all for the fighting, agreeing to the terms and told her to open the door. Angela was surprised by how much Callie trusted her. Callie didn't have time to tell from sheep polish. She wants to help the research team in the outskirts lab. Besides, she can destroy Angela and the library if she was lying. Yeah, Angela was expecting Callie to be more rampageous. Well, this was before she became Gibura, so that would explain it. From what I can tell from the exchange between Callie and Angela, Enoch died first, then Carmen killed herself, Elia tested cogito on herself and died painfully, Gabriel killed himself due to OCD and losing his mind, due to the guilt of Elia testing cogito on herself, due to a lack of access to that being restricted enough. Giovanni died due to a failed experiment. Michelle then contacted the head and told them where to find that lab, which resulted in Garion coercing Daniel to release the abnormalities, which resulted in them killing him. Then Callie and Garion killed each other in a fight to the death. Michelle committed suicide not long after. Benjamin, of course, was the last to be killed. Sometime after the outskirts lab was attacked and Angela was made. As for Lisa, a bit difficult with her, as it's not stated how she died, but it's likely to be sometime after that same attack. During this battle, Bina finally got off her black and yellow clad and was willing to fight personally, due to opponents worthy of her abilities appearing, starting with the Red Mist herself, believing that she might have a better chance than last time, due to her knowing about EGO. So that sadist turned Blood Knight, armed with degraded F-Corp and J-Corp tech. That's one that unlocks things and the other unlocks them. She joined the washed-up lump Roland, along with Gebura, who was an older version of the Red Mist. And they, along with their assistant librarians, fought her at her most strongest. Kali did not go down to the librarians without a fight. Not even Gebura, who was probably feeling strange trying to kick her. Yeah, her own. But the simulation of the Red Mist was eventually defeated, and Gebura was able to gain a surge of power from what she previously lost. Although, since she's not exactly human, she's not able to wield her full power. But she'll be more powerful than she was with any other key pages. After that reception, Roland asked if the big red sword and the clothes that the Red Mist was wielding were EGO. Angela reveals that it was, as far as she was aware. She also revealed that her sword was a prototype, more specifically of the mimicry EGO, which was extracted when Christopher was turned into the nothing there abnormality. Only Kali, and by extension Gebura, was capable of wielding it properly. Yeah, she must have had level 5 fortitude, and was level 5 herself, as the later model of that EGO required that in the facility. Roland then asked about her coat. Angela told him that it was an EGO that was truly hers. This impressed Roland by how powerful manifested EGO is, how it might alter the entire food chain of the city. Angela told him that some EGO is stronger than others. It also depends on the individual. Few can draw as much power from EGO as Kali did, at least without it overwhelming the wielder. This is called EGO corrosion, which is what happens when someone tries to use EGO that they're physically and mentally unable to handle. It results in them being consumed by it. This is an in-game reason why, in Lobotomy Corporation rather, there are levels to make sure that the right people can use them more safely. Also, she revealed that the mimicry prototype was low quality compared to the finished version, which still impressed Roland, as it's that powerful at low quality? Asking if she got the picture, the whole relationship between the distortion, EGO, and abnormalities. Angela was finally starting to see it clearly. where the light that radiated during the white nights and dark days was supposed to shine on the city for a full week, rather than just 3 days, which would have, in theory, resulted in all manifesting their EGO and having the strength to avoid meaningless deaths, regardless of wealth or social status. The power to challenge the world. Yeah, in theory, that's possible. In practice, it would result in sadists and psychopaths as well gaining a stronger means to brutalize their victims. Some of them might lose their EGO, but they wouldn't be taken over. Roland guessed that the distortion was what happens if the EGO takes the wielder over. And at this point, that Angela openly confirmed that the plan was ruined because of her. It was why the plan was cut short, that the light was cut short, which resulted in an unstable power being spread, resulting in distortions. The selves of each individual losing control, where they became mindless beasts at worst, and beings of destruction at best. All of them consumed by their own EGO. The fine line between EGO and abnormality is how much control one has. And Roland asked, what was the prerequisite? Yeah, that is a good question. Angela answered that by saying that only those that accomplish what they're honest about, not letting obstacles get in the way, can manifest and wield the power of EGO. Okay, that's definitely Kali. However, if it ends in frustration or despair, to the extent that that person breaks and their will crumbles to the point that their emotions get twisted, this results in the overwhelmed individual having a distortion arise within them. Angela speculated that the stronger and purer the desire, the greater the distortion becomes. Now that would explain why Philip became a stony, waxy angel of death. Roland saw something that didn't line up, as despair was common, as was giving up on dreams. Why aren't there more distorting or wielding EGO? Angela made it clear that it only manifests to those who pursue their own sincere desires, which makes sense, both to Roland and to me. It would also explain why it's not more common, as most within the city don't dream for themselves, they just conform, avoiding trouble where possible, rather than pursue individual happiness. Wings, syndicates, fixers, it makes no difference. The destination they go isn't theirs. Angela then went on to say that only selfish beings that live for themselves can wield that power. Egoists is the term that she came up with. So Oscar of the Wedge office had a point. Those that say that they're working for others in that city, they're usually just deceiving themselves. Angela liked the outcome that happened due to her ruining the plan, as it meant that unworthy scum would be unable to gain power that they didn't deserve. That's harsh, the way she put it. And what's the definition of unworthy scum as far as she's concerned? As it can vary from individual to individual. Roland, at this point, was surprised to find out that she might have sabotaged a plan with full knowledge of what would happen. Angela told him that she just wanted to live and take her vengeance, as she was meant to be shut down at the end of the plan. She was outraged, so she stole the light. Unfortunately, due to the light being incomplete, she was trapped in the library along with the abnormalities. So she was no better off than before, as far as leaving was concerned, as her body had a hardwired failsafe that prevented her from physically leaving that place. Roland figured out that the books gained from using the invitation was to... And then Angela completed his thought by saying that, and confirming that, it was to retrieve the light that was scattered across the city. She asked if he's noticed something different about the guests. They all have dreams. Most others that Roland couldn't say that about. They also get swept up by emotion more easily, such as affection and friendship. Angela noted that it was due to the light influencing them. Either that, or at least in some cases, amplifying what's already there. Or at the very least, bringing it to the surface. And no, Roland, it wasn't because they were closer to the light, as not all of them were in District 12. It was because some that had the seed of light planted in them had greater potential than others, more powerful effects. The timing of the invitation was when the library needed those individuals the most. The incomplete fragments of the light leading to the one book, which was what the invitation guided her to, which had the power of the complete, undivided light, which would give her and all those within the library freedom. For a start, she'd be able to live as a human, where she wouldn't have to hear that line that Ian said to her. A machine must behave as a machine. She'd also be able to forget quite a few things. Roland then asked if she's not feeling any kind of responsibility or guilt for what she's done, and is doing what she's doing in order to get to a goal, consuming the results, ignoring the process. Angela basically said, "No, I'm taking this myself. No one else is going to do this for me. No one else gives a..." She focused on her own life. To hell with any others that are in the way. He said it himself. Everyone has their share of personal affairs and woes. They have none but themselves to blame if it happens to them. Roland was pondering this as he said, "Solely for yourself, huh?" He doesn't sound so sure about that. Well, there was that incident that Roland spoke of. It wasn't mentioned what that was, And why was he asking questions regarding Angela's responsibility regarding the distortion? Let's deal with that at another time. There's too little information at this point. And move on to Nosferatu. Now, this abnormality is a new one. It was shown in the art book of Lobotomy Corporation, but he was never put in the final version of the game. He looks like a pretty boy version of a vampire, but when at half HP, he'll change into a red and black winged demonic-looking monster. He has sanguine bats as minions to assist him in battle. This is likely a reference to the 1922 silent German horror film of the same name, where his on-screen name is really Count Orlok, where he was preying on an estate agent and his wife within a Transylvanian castle during the 19th century. Now, this caused problems, as it was stated to be an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which the heirs of that Irish author had a problem with. And this is despite the fact that a number of details were altered to avoid being accused of copyright infringements. But much as it would be a problem over a century later, well, by court ruling, all copies of that film were destroyed. Well, at least they tried to destroy all the copies of that film, as a few copies survived. And this abnormality was loosely based on the fictional depiction of Dracula. Who was in turn based on someone real, Vlad III, better known as Vlad the Impaler. Anyway, going off topic, let's move on to the behaviour of this abnormality. His behaviour includes welcoming the librarians, greeting those that are thirsty. Sorry, Nosferatu, they don't feed on blood, nor do they have a different kind of thirst. Yeah, don't take this out of context, if you know what I mean. And I don't think they're lawyers either. He told them to forfeit great hope and forget about the pretense of humanity. Oh, I see you've met Roland. He saw it as too early for a nap, asking them to join him in sharing the pleasure. Oh, by pleasure, do you mean their blood? Yeah, this one is a vampiric abnormality, one that can replenish HP from some attacks. When he reaches half HP, he shifts into his monstrous form, seeing that the dance macabre is with everyone. All would have a fair share of being eaten. Oh, come on. You had to rub it in to Gebura, one who's from District 23, and we know what happens there, don't we? Well, he saw it as time for a feast, to enjoy the blood-red night imbued with madness. Wait, have you been dating Elena? He saw no escape from his thirst for blood, seeing that blood in its purest form as what can bring him eternal happiness. Oh, come on, where's the sun where we need it? He's likely to have a stronger version to UV radiation. As for what Gebura thought about this, she noted that Nosferatu looked starved, advising caution to the others, and upon killing him, she noted that she might have heard of that vampire before, either because she found a copy of Bram Stoker's Dracula, or the myriad vampire movies have appeared during her off hours at some point. Yeah, as in when she was between jobs. As for her assistant librarians, they noted that they noted that Nosferatu wanted something horrifying, yet similar to them, not seeing him as the monster to begin with. When they killed the vampire, they noted that they thought that they saw it all. The new abnormalities appeared. They found his thirst for blood disgusting, and felt weak for some reason. As for Nosferatu's battle stage, it wouldn't look out of place in any of the Castlevania games, even the bad ones. It looks rather plain, largely red with a castle in the background, with a cloudy sky where the sun was approaching, although they couldn't wait that long to defeat him. Even though the sanguine bats became stronger when they were above a certain speed, and Nosferatu healed with some attacks. The language team prevailed, but this turned out to be a taster of what was to come. Yes, this one has the theme of violence, the language of rage. Well, that's what is coming next. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!